So, today I want to tell you a little bit about some of the functional microbiome testing that I've been using that has been so profound and so helpful for my clients and my family. And I just want to get into a little bit about what we're looking at in the microbiome and how that really impacts your gut health and all the things that we can kind of gather from this incredible testing. So, one of the main things that you may be familiar with when it comes to talking about the microbiome is the idea of diversity, that we need a diverse number of species and microbes living in our gut that are supporting our gut health. These little microbes, these bacteria, do so much for our bodies. They help us break down our food, they help us to protect the gut lining, to maintain balance in the gut so pathogens don't overgrow. They do so much, and they're such intelligent little creatures living inside of us. There are more of these little microbes living in our body than there are cells in the body itself. So when we talk about diversity, we're talking about having a variation in the microbes that are in our gut, having a wide variety of these bacteria that carry out different functions for us in the gut and for our whole body health as well. So one of the things that this test looks at is, what is your alpha diversity, what is your beta diversity. Diversity is going to be the quantity of species that are picked up in your sample. It's a stool test, so picked up in your stool sample. The beta diversity has to do with the quality, the variation, and the composition of your gut related to a healthy gut. So we're looking at these things um, to determine not only how many, but how abundant, how even it is throughout the microbiome, and that beta diversity, the quality, and really, that variation and the resilience and the health of the gut all kind of show up in those markers. So that's super powerful. We need to have quite a few species. We want to have close to 200 species for a healthy Western gut. And I've also come to understand that in the blue zones, where people are living their longest lives, there's up to 400 species of these little guys living inside our bodies and carrying out different work. And so it's really interesting, the research around the microbiome and around this balance of bacteria that we have going on in our gut is so important for for healthy aging, for carrying out these different processes and functions. And there's so much support when we can get our microbiome in balance for not just your gut health, but pretty much every other system in the body. Another thing that we're going to look at on this test, are there species, undesirable species, showing up in your sample. There may be high levels of certain bacterial strains that are showing up that are really acting against and working against your body. And so sometimes the healing plan in relation to that will have to do with how do we kind of weed those out and build the good guys up, because then they'll keep it more in balance. Usually there's not one major pathogen that is taken over when there's a good level of healthy bacteria in the gut as well. So keep in mind, everything with the microbiome is about balance. We're not necessarily trying to eradicate all of these bad guys and completely eliminate them, but we do want to have them in balance. And there are some strains that we don't want in there at all. And with those, we would want to completely get rid of those and see that reflected on the test, and see that reflected as your symptoms start to as you start to heal and as your symptoms start to subside. Those are good indicators, but then it's also good to do a retest at times and make sure that some of these strains are not there. Everyone doesn't have those. A lot of times it really is just about balance. And often when we build up the good guys, most often when we build up the good guys, they're doing their job properly, we don't have to worry so much about all these other pathogens and bacteria and fungal overgrowths and a lot of these other things taking over. So, one of the really important bacteria that I want to talk about here is Akkermansia. When someone has low Akkermansia muciniphila on their biome test, we know that they are not producing the the guys who are helping to maintain that gut barrier. And so, if you've heard of leaky gut, that's what we're talking about here, that increased intestinal permeability, where there's not the protection and the defense and that barrier between the gut lining and your bloodstream and things getting into the rest of your body that aren't supposed to be there. So many of these things are meant to stay in the gut and within that intestinal wall. When you have a leaky gut, there's things such as LPS or large protein particles or different foods that get through that lining. And that's one of the ways that food sensitivities develops, is that they come through that food lining and then your body reacts because it's a foreigner in a place that it's not supposed to be. So your body's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing by forming antibodies and working against that particular food or protein or LPS or chemicals or things like that. And there's toxins and other things that get through the intestinal lining when that happens as well. So it's just really important to have a healthy intestinal lining, and it's really important to have good levels of this Akkermansia in your body. And so when we have those a healthy level of Akkermansia, then we are really able to keep those things out of the bloodstream, prevent further food sensitivities, heal from food sensitivities, and so many of the challenges that we have. When things are getting into the bloodstream, it's creating an inflammatory cascade in the body, an inflammatory response, and there's so much that comes from that. And then the body has to work so much harder to just maintain day-to-day functions. We can look and see if these keystone or commensal bacteria, which are the essential bacteria in the gut, things that we know are very important to maintaining gut health. We can see which of those are there at a good level, which ones are maybe out of like overgrown, and which ones are not detected. So this is really important because we need to know if these keystone bacteria that are carrying out essential functions in the body, if they are suppressed or if they're very low, then we need to try and regrow those. If they're really high, then we want to bring it back into balance. Again, everything's about balance. We do not want these keystone species to be just rampant in the body. We definitely don't want them to be lacking. And what happens when things are extreme on either end, we're going to have imbalances in other ways, and we'll start to see it showing up in symptoms. We'll start to see it showing up on testing, and we can really correlate a lot of these markers with what's happening in your lived experience and what you're struggling with from day to day. Another section of the test that is really important to take a look at is how we're breaking down our carbohydrates and how we're breaking down our proteins. And what happens is, if we're breaking these down well, carbohydrates creating short chain fatty acids help to protect our gut health, help to protect that intestinal barrier. There's so much benefit from having that metabolization process going well. And if it's not going well, most of those can become toxic in the body as well. If we have too high of levels of certain short chain fatty acids, if our lactate's too high, if our protein breakdown isn't going well, then we get these buildups in the body. Too much P-cresol, too many polyamines, too much hydrogen sulfide, which is not a diagnostic tool we use for testing SIBO, but it is an indicator we want to look at in relation to SIBO. Methane production, things like that. So when these things are out of whack, we really can start to pick up on, like, what are the patterns in this person's body that are throwing things off? What do we need to do to help bring this back into balance and to really help their gut become more resilient and able to kind of manage what it's dealing with day to day, help you to better digest your food. And so one of the things I want to say about this is that as we identify these imbalances and support that, and the gut starts to function better and do its work better, that can get us into a really wonderful cycle of healing and support, and working with our stress, working with things like anxiety and stuff like that. All of this is kind of in a loop. So when we're on that downward spiral and the gut is dysfunctional, we have food sensitivities, we're really having a really hard time eating things that are making us feel good, which causes more inflammation. Gut health gets worse. Pathogens increase. The good bacteria ends up um, lessening, and the bad bacteria ends up growing because this environment isn't conducive for healthy bacteria to grow. I just want to point out that that this is such a vicious cycle, whether it's a downward spiral or a beautiful cycle if it's that upward spiral of healing. Because as you start to support your gut and support these microbes in the gut, so much wonderful change can come from that. So, another thing we can look at here is neurotransmitter production. 80% of your serotonin is produced in the gut. We produce part of our GABA in the gut. We want to make sure that those bacteria that are producing these neurotransmitters for us is at a good level. We want to make sure that we are producing the amount of serotonin that we need to maintain our mood, to help with behavior. And when some of these markers are off, it can really impact our cognitive ability. It can really impact our mental health state as well. And so, looking into what's happening in the gut with the production of these different bacteria and the regulation of these neurotransmitters, and really making sure that we have that in balance can impact our mental health so much. And serotonin does a lot of other things for the gut as well. We have a lot of signaling between the gut and brain with our neurotransmitters. When that inflammation is happening, we have a lot of inflammatory signaling that takes place, and an inflammatory pathway opens up. And so, making sure these are in place can help us to manage our mental health and to really be in a better state with our mental health. Another thing that we look at are B vitamins. So our gut produces a lot of our B vitamins, vitamin K, glutathione, things like that. And so making sure that these antioxidants and vitamins are at a good level is really important, and it can also help to guide what we do in our daily life. So if we have quite a lot of B vitamins being produced in the gut, we may not need to have a B vitamin supplement all the time. Or maybe when we correlate that with blood work, we do need B12 or we need certain ones, but we may not need all of them. And so, really looking at what is our gut producing in combination with what's happening on your blood work labs can be really profound. And bringing these different labs together, one showing what the underlying function is, and another showing how is it showing up for you in your blood, in your body, in real time. And when we bring that together, we can get a really comprehensive picture of what's going on. And along those lines with B vitamins, I like to bring in genetics, because with genetics, we are looking at which form of B vitamin probably will serve you the best. So what happens with B vitamins is a lot of people think they have challenges with their methylation cycle, MTHFR. They start taking B vitamins, or we take them just because we feel like we should. And it's true, our body needs B vitamins. If it's not in the right form, though, people can end up over methylated, and it can really cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of other challenges for them. So it's really important to make sure that the B vitamins that you're taking are the proper B vitamins for you and for your genetics. And it's really important to see what's being produced in your gut, because one of the other things I love about this test is that we can take a look at what's happening in the gut and help to stimulate and facilitate the production of some of these vitamins on their own, help to facilitate these processes that our body works so hard for, on so that we're doing those things on our own, and we might not need to be taking supplementation for it. So like if you're taking anything to support your bile acid or to replace bile acid, like ox bile, TUDCA, there's a lot of different things, sunflower lecithin, things like that, that can help to support our bile flow. Bile is super important in breaking down fats, and it's also super important in a lot of other things in the body. When we're talking about those kind of supplements, it's really great to help our bodies to produce what we need, help that process to happen naturally, and then supplement as we need after that. And that doesn't mean we don't need some of those supports in between or before or earlier on in the process. We may need something to support it, and then we do the testing, and then we help work with the gut and help the gut to really get work with the gut so that it's producing these things and functioning on its own without so much supplementation. And then we can kind of see where you're at and add in what you actually truly need. And maybe that's for a time, and maybe it's something ongoing, but it's just really important to help these underlying processes to function better. Like I don't believe it's healthy to just be taking supplements all the time, to be replacing things that our body is not doing on its own unless we need to. So really figuring out what's necessary. I know a lot of people are spending a lot of money on supplementation, spending a lot of money on these kind of things that are just kind of filling the gaps and filling the holes because there's so much dysfunction underneath. And so I love to look underneath the surface and really see where your body's at and what it truly needs. So there's a lot of other things we can pick up on this test. We can see how your body's recycling estrogen, how the estrobiome is working, which are those bacteria that help us to metabolize estrogen well. Such a big thing for people with estrogen dominance or hormone imbalances. We can take a look at different species together. Some keep others in check. Some help to facilitate the processes that some of the bacteria need to carry out. Some of the less desirable things that are happening, we can see if there are levels of things like E. coli or, ascomycota, which has to do with candida. That's a true candidal overgrowth. A lot of people think they have candida overgrowth, but often there are other things going on. And so we can see on here if there is a true candida issue, and then if there is a true candida issue, what's upstream from that? So what's causing that to happen? And so often it's dysbiosis or this imbalance in the gut between the various bacteria. We can also see if there is a histamine issue in the body. And when we're talking about histamine or some of the ammonia or polyamine, some of the protein fermentation byproducts, we're talking about toxicity in the body. And so too much histamine can cause a lot of challenges, as so many of you know, but things like ammonia and polyamines and p-cresol, when they get high, they can actually be toxic. They can impact the brain and inflammation in the brain. They can really impact our immune regulation and our ability for healthy immune responses. And so, it's really just important, I think, for people to have even just a bare bones understanding of how much these gut bacteria do to keep our body functioning well and in balance. And so I just want to encourage you that that this testing is out there and it exists. And when you find someone who can read these tests well and really correlate what's happening with your genetics, your blood work, your gut health and microbiome, and then if you have other challenges with like hormones, we can bring together like a Dutch test, or for people who have chronic fatigue syndrome, maybe looking at an organic acid test. There is testing out there that can really help us to see under the surface, and when you're working with someone who understands this, they can help you to really bring these labs together and correlate and do the detective work so that you're not trying to figure this out on your own. There's so many pieces to the puzzle, and for each person's healing journey, there are so many pieces that go along with that. And so I just want to encourage you that this is out there, and there are people that are doing this testing. I do this testing. I offer it to my one-on-one clients so we can go through very customized and personalized healing plans and come up with something that is going to work for you and really help you to find relief and get to the root causes of the symptoms that you're dealing with individually. So I'll put a link below in the show notes. And below the video, if you want to book a free health assessment with me, I do a free 30-minute call where we can talk about what you're struggling with and kind of come up with a healing plan for you. And yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can go to my website at leahvong.com and send me a message there. You're also welcome to email me at leah@leahvong.com. So I hope this has been helpful. I know it's a lot of information. Feel free to reach out with questions, and we'll see you next time.